Yes, ready to jump in. It is my pleasure to introduce you to JJ Rorie. I have been following her on LinkedIn, and she is very active in the world of product management, bopping around the US, speaking here and there. And recently did a program with someone else I follow on LinkedIn, Lisa Zane. So I look forward to listening to that. And without further ado, I'll introduce you to JJ Rorie with the Immutable Truths of Great Product Managers. JJ Rorie.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So good to be here with you. So we will be talking about the immutable truths of great product managers and how those skills, those behaviors will allow you to succeed in the product manager role, but also to move up in your career. Okay. So mentioned a book. So I this summer released the book Immutable, 5 Truths of Great Product Managers. And my whole idea behind the book was to find core skills, behaviors, et cetera, commonalities across all of the successful product managers that I had worked with over my career. I just always saw that they navigated the role in a way that I thought was admirable. They seemed to just have it together. And so my hypothesis was that there were some skills that anyone who was going to succeed in product management would have to have, and kind of bore that out through the book. Now, the thing that came out of that is, yes, the product manager role, these are very specifically important for that, but there's also a lot of other leadership qualities from the book. And in all of my talks, I try to contextualize it within product management. A lot of these skills that we'll talk about, they're broad, they're important for lots of various roles, but I wanted to get the essence of what it meant for product management. And I also think it's really important that we keep things as simple as possible. We work in complex environments in product management. A lot of the technologies we work on are complex. Things can get complicated. And so the more we can keep things simple as we try to build these immutable truths in ourselves, I think that's going to kind of benefit us the most. So great product managers, at the end of the day, have these 5 things about themselves or within their arsenal of skills, and it allows them to navigate the role more successfully. So first and foremost, great product managers have an exceptionally high customer intelligence level. They are experts at building relationships. They're master communicators. They have uncommonly good judgment, and they are fanatical about prioritizing. Again, as you see, none of these, are groundbreaking. I'm certainly not the first person to tell you that you should communicate well if you're going to be in a product manager role. But it's the way that these work together and the importance that successful product managers put on these, in addition to all of the hard skills and the frameworks and all of the things that we have to do in product management. These are the foundation. These are the anchor of success. And frankly, being happy in the role, because a lot of times these things can lead to kind of making it an easier world. Here's the other thing, as I mentioned, guess what? These are also really important for leaders. And so as you're navigating your career and building your career, if you work on these things, ultimately you'll be in a position for promotion and for kind of moving up or moving wherever you would like to move in your career. So let's briefly talk about each one of these 5. Customer intelligence. Obviously, again, we understand that the kind of centerpiece of product management is understanding customers. And I look at customer intelligence as an ongoing skill. This is not a point in time activity. This is something that we have to continuously build in ourselves if we're going to be in product, and especially if we're going to move forward, right? Because again, think of any leader you've worked with. They understand the market and the customers to an nth degree, right? I mean, they're just really experts at understanding what it all means. If you look at customer intelligence from a kind of level perspective, obviously it starts with the basics. Who are our customers, whether they're business customers, individuals? It's all about who they are. And then it's kind of what the situations they find themselves in. What are their market conditions, et cetera. And then ultimately you keep moving up to understand their motivations, what's driving them, whether it's their business strategy or their individual motivations. And ultimately the crescendo of customer intelligence is all designed to get us to finding some of those pain points, right? Well, here's the thing. again, kind of thinking of it as a career development, professional development. The truth is most folks in product management understand the basics of our customers, who they are, what industries they work in, et cetera. But here's where you can kind of break yourself apart. The great product managers, the great leaders dig into the psyche of customers. And so they understand it at a different level. Customer intelligence is table stakes, but it's where you kind of take that skill, that knowledge that can actually build your career and make you more valuable to the product and to the company. Okay. Second one is relationship building. We are in an inherently cross-functional role, right? Product management doesn't do anything by themselves. We're constantly working with and partnering with our internal stakeholders. Now, here's the thing about relationship building. There's a ton of things that goes into it, right? But at the end of the day, in the context of product management, what my research has shown is that it really comes down to confidence or trust. You might want to use that word, but it's confidence in you as a product manager and confidence in what you're building together, the product, right? So each person in your ecosystem with whom you need to have a good working relationship, you need to kind of understand, where they stand in that confidence level. Here's the thing though, you can't process your way through human relationships. It's not possible. There's too much personality, emotions involved, right? But so, while we can't apply a framework and make every relationship perfect, you can and you should do, the groundwork to understand where you stand today. And again, it's back to those elements, right? So you want to ask yourself and understand, do my teammates have confidence in me? Do they believe I'm capable as a product manager? Do they believe I understand the business? Do they believe I'm influencing and taking the team and the product in the right level? Right. And then secondarily, do they believe in what you're building together? And I know that sounds like a little, maybe even difficult to assign some disposition there, because ultimately you might have some information you don't want to know, that somebody doesn't have confidence in you or somebody doesn't believe in what you're building together. But you've got to understand those elements before you can actually drive the changes that you need in the relationship. Okay, so relationship building, big, broad topic. When it comes to product management, it's about understanding who in our relationship, ecosystem, who on the product team has a lot of confidence, who doesn't have much confidence, and then we kind of apply the principles to those relationships that we need, right? Building a relationship or nurturing a relationship that's already good is a totally different scenario than repairing a bad relationship or repairing a relationship with someone who doesn't have confidence in you. So again, there's no framework that's going to make relationship building perfect, but great product managers and people who are kind of very intentional about their career are the ones who don't take these things for granted. They really put the time in to understand where relationships stand today. Okay. So communication. Again, this is, wow, maybe if I don't actually believe any of these 5 truths are more important than the others, but this is probably the bedrock of everything we do, right? In product management, we're communicating constantly. We're, writing, we're, presenting, we're talking, big, huge, important meetings, one-on-one meetings and everything in between. At the end of the day, it really comes down to connection and clarity. When we talk about communication. Again, this doesn't mean that you have to be a keynote speaker and comfortable speaking in front of thousands of people. If you do, that's great. But that's not what good communication in product management is. It's about connecting with our audience and making sure that we do that, and then making our message as clear as possible. If you work on these 2 things, that's a huge step forward in this skill set. Okay. A couple of thoughts on connecting and clarity. Again, we meet with people constantly. We're constantly delivering various messages to various audiences. You certainly will probably have a deep dive into the minutia of tech specs with your engineering partners. And then the very next meeting, you may go into a high-level strategy session with your executives, right? And we do that kind of pivot quite often in product management. And so we've got to understand who we're talking to, and what their perspective is. What do they care? Do they care about the why about what we're doing, or do they care about the the details of how we're going to do it, or somewhere in between? And so just using kind of a message continuum, if you will, or being very clear on your audience's point of view, just before any meeting or any presentation or any communication, you just kind of ask yourself, what do they care about? What's their point of view? And then if you can tailor your message that way, guess what? You're going to connect with them. There are a few things that will disconnect from an audience more easily or more quickly than if you're going in with the wrong level of detail. Someone who only wants the big sky picture and you're going into the minutia, or vice versa, somebody who needs to know something and you're just talking about the vision, right? So again, know who's on the other end of that communication and be clear about how you present to them. And then clarity, lots of ways that you can make sure your message is clear. One of the most difficult for us, anyone really, to grasp and to get kind of really good at is to make our messages concise. Here's the thing. We sometimes communicate very complicated matters, but we still have to make it as simple as possible, as concise as possible, and then let the audience follow up with questions as they need, right? We can't go in with all of the details because, again, we'll lose that connection and our message will not be clear. All right. This is what some of the best leaders do. This is what some of the best product managers do, is they really practice on being concise in their messages, and then they allow follow-up as needed. But they start simple and go from there. Really important quality in leadership and in product. The fourth one is judgment and decision-making. This one tends to be a little bit intimidating for folks because they think, judgment is sometimes kind of a nebulous concept, right? Some people think that you either have it or you don't. Well, here's the thing about product management and good judgment in general, but especially in our world. Good judgment doesn't mean you always make the right decision. We still mess up. That's just how it is. We do not have an environment where it's crystal clear what to do. And so sometimes we don't get it right, but that doesn't mean we don't have good judgment. We learn from that, right? Product management is an environment where there's often not a right and wrong answer. There are multiple options that could be valuable. And so we have to understand that to have good judgment, we work in this ambiguous world where there's not clear-cut answers. But what folks who have good judgment do is they try to avoid cognitive biases for the inputs that go into our decisions, so that the data coming into our decision-making process is as unbiased as possible. And then they just embrace the fact that we're not going to always have that right answer. We live and work in an ambiguous environment, and that's just part of it, right? So some of these biases that we'll see, and actually Dave Tyus is unfortunately the same time as me. He's awesome at behavioral science and some of these cognitive biases, but some of the ones that hit home in product management are that we jump into solution mode. We try to confirm what we already believe. We frame things and get some unbiased feedback from customers. We kind of only see things in a certain way, and we're risk averse. And so again, lots more in the book and other things about these biases, but good leaders and good product managers are just intentional. We can't avoid all cognitive biases. It's not humanly possible, but they're very intentional about it. They're aware of it, and they try to avoid these as much as possible. And then they just know that we make predictions. That's our job, right? To see around the corner and to make a bet on what's going to happen in the future. And there is no such thing as a sure bet in product management. And so we just use our judgment and move forward as much as possible, right? Not the easiest thing to develop in yourself. It takes confidence, and some of the other truths allow you to have that confidence to build this good judgment. But it is absolutely a skill, a muscle that you can build and create in yourself, and really, really important in successful business people and product people. And then finally, prioritization. Great product managers, great business leaders are fanatical about using their time in the most important way, right? In product management, we prioritize our work a lot. Which feature gets in this release? And I'm not going to talk to you about that so much because there's a lot of good ways to do that. What I want to talk to you about is how prioritization in our world really starts with your time and how you're spending your time to do the things that are most important for your product, right? And ultimately, the better you get at prioritizing your time, the more effective you'll be and the more successful you'll be. And then, of course, you'll be more in line with, the visibility that you need and the performance reviews that you need, and ultimately get, developed and get promoted. So when I think about starting kind of prioritizing my time, I use this is an acronym, vital, important, transactional, ancillary learning. It's just a time management kind of mode that I use. And I literally go through and I look at how my time is being spent. And the best product managers that I've worked with do something similar, whether it's these categories or something else, but they understand and they categorize their time in their meetings and they say, was that vital? Was that ancillary? Was that somebody else's responsibility? But I actually jumped in because of some reason, right? And you want to look across and have kind of a balance of your time. Now you can do things. I personally color code my calendar. And so I'm proactively looking at my time and how I'm prioritizing it. And you have a different color for each category. And you can just look at your calendar and know if some things are imbalanced and you need to push some meetings off. You can do a retroactive look at your last month in a Miro board, the top left here, whatever it is. It's about being intentional about prioritizing your time. We don't always get it right. We work in a very hectic environment and product. And so sometimes we look up on a Friday afternoon and realize that, holy crap, I just spent the entire week putting out fires, right? And did nothing on my vital or important. Guess what? That's just part of it. But you don't want to do that every week, right? You want to be as intentional and proactive as possible. So again, these are really kind of simple, practical pieces of advice that kind of come from a place of simplicity and also contextualized around product management, like the things that we can do in product management to make ourselves just a little bit better in these areas. So just quick summary. Again, product managers and leaders have exceptional customer intelligence. They're great at building relationships. They master the skill of communication. They've got great decision-making and judgment, and then they prioritize their time very well. Okay. Now, again, the key takeaway that I would leave you with this morning is if you want to work on your career and set yourself up for a successful career, wherever that, you may want to go in your future, these 5 skills really can be the foundation for anywhere you want to go. Because again, think about it. Every leader you've probably ever worked with that you would consider a great leader had these skills maybe not perfected, because there's no such thing as perfected. It is a journey, but they were really good at these things, right? And so the better you get at these 5 foundational skills, these immutable truths, the more positioned you will be for career growth. All right. The other thing is we never stop growing. We never stop learning. It is a constant journey. So let's make sure that you, yes, be persistent. Yes, be intentional about building these in yourself, but give yourself grace. Sometimes you mess up. Sometimes you make a bad decision. It feels like our judgment's not so great. Sometimes we don't communicate so well. We're never going to be perfect. It's just a journey of building these skills over time. All right. And that's it. Ready for questions? Thank you. You can connect with me there at jjrorie.com connect or that QR code.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, JJ. And if you want to stop sharing your slides, then people can see you better during the Q&A. I do have a couple of questions for you. So one is, Sid Chopra asks, JJ, do you have any examples of biases hijacking communication?
Ooh, interesting. Well, I mean, I think biases, what happens with biases, and again, there's different biases, right? Cognitive biases that hit us. One of the framing, that was on the list of the cognitive biases that hit us pretty hard in product management. Framing is the idea that people respond differently to information based on how it's presented to them, right? And so the way you frame a question or the way that you present something to someone, they're going to respond because, in response to that. And so, sales, marketing, lots of politics, things are framed in a certain way, right? The way that we want someone to respond to us. Sales and marketing, because we want to position ourselves well. Well, guess what? In product management, we don't want to have a biased answer. We want, as for the most part, very unbiased, clean feedback from our customers. And so communication goes both ways, right? And so if we're, talking to our customer and we want, unfiltered feedback for them to improve our current products and find things to work on in the future, we want to frame a question in a way that is completely unbiased, and they're going to give us feedback that's unbiased. So lots of product managers struggle with that communication tactic. So they frame a question like, hey, what do you think of this new feature? Doesn't this look great? Guess what? That's not a great way to get unbiased feedback. And so that's kind of the one that jumps out the most to me with that, is the way we position or frame a question to whoever we're talking to is going to elicit a certain response from them. And we've got to be careful on how we use that.
Great. That's a great example. It just reminds me of like when you do survey design, and it's all how you ask the question, how someone responds. Archit Jane asks, how do you build relationships with the product management group?
Well, I mean, so again, the building, like the methods and the techniques to actually get to know someone and understand what they're going through and show the empathy and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I'm going to take that to the side for a moment, right? Like the things that you actually do to get to know someone. It starts with what I talked about. It starts with understanding where each person sits. And it is an individual exercise because you need individual relationships with each person in the product team, or the ecosystem, as I call it. And that may be 10 different individual relationships. And then ultimately the team itself has, a culture and a relationship and a camaraderie itself, but start individually. And so each person, ask yourself, do they believe in me? And do they believe in what we're building? And you can, just take your own kind of judgment and understanding of how they've, how you've worked with them in the past and assigned them kind of yes, they have confidence in me. There's this matrix or quadrant in the book that I use that literally you can score them and kind of make it a very as unbiased as possible way. Now there's some subjectivity there, right? Because you're assuming, do they have confidence in me or not? You also can work with them and ask them, like, building relationships is important. I would like to do this with you. Let's talk about our confidence levels in each other. So start individually. And then from there, if you've got, someone that I call a detractor, you're going to have to repair that relationship. That's a completely different scenario than someone I call a champion, who you're just nurturing that good relationship. So the things you do, a virtual coffee chat isn't going to work for a relationship, right? You're going to have to dig in and do some things. So that's where I would start. I would start individually and make sure that you have a good relationship with each individual. And then as a team, do some team building things. Like, again, it goes back to, do you trust each other to make things happen? It goes back to the why behind what you're building, the customer stories and the problems you're solving, and do some exercises and some kind of team building things that take you back to the customer, and take you out of the minutia of building. Those are some of the mechanisms that I've found that help with relationships across the team.